Like a trusted turnout jacket you've had for years, Flex 7 outer shell fabric delivers a perfectly broken-in feel on the very first wear. Flexible, comfortable, and powered with the strength of Enforce technology, Flex 7 outer shell fabric is made to move. To learn more, visit tenkatafabrics.com/flex7. Flex 7, powered by Enforce technology. Only from Tenkata Protective Fabrics.
Fire Service Data and Tech Talk.
Hey everybody, it's Eddie Buchanan on Fire Engineering with the Fire Service Data and Tech Talk podcast. We're just back from FDIC. It was an incredible show this year. Record-setting attendance, somewhere north of 36,000 people, all in one town, bunch of firefighters in one place, and it seems like everything went well. This was a fun year for me because I did the first data workshop I think we've done there that I can recall anyway. Did a operationalizing data in the fire service. That was cool. It was very well attended. We had great interaction, and I'm excited to see where that goes at the conference. And one of the things I think is cool that is the call for papers is open. They started as soon as the conference is over. You can put your class proposals in for next year. And I encourage everybody to, if you've got an idea, take a whack at it. The worst you might do is they tell you no, but maybe they'll tell you yes. And those are due by June 17th. So make sure that you get those proposals in. I'm hoping to see some data-related classes, some tech-related classes in the lineup next year. So hopefully, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably have some interest in it. And we'd love to see you there at FDIC next year. And also, of course, I got to mention the release of the book. The Training Officer's Handbook came out at FDIC. We're very excited. Bobby Drake and John Buckman and I worked together on this for a long time. And so we're excited for that as well. So this episode, I go to a lot of conferences and I attend a lot of events related to data and technology. And I see my guests all the time at various events. And it's always interesting to hear what they're up to. And they literally blow me away with what they have the ability to do there at Fairfax Fire and Rescue in Virginia, so suburb of Northern Virginia. So my guests today are Chief John Morrison and Jessica LeBlanc. Did I say that right, Jessica?
Yep.
All right. So welcome to the show. Like I said, we go to a lot of meetings together, so it's always fun to hear what you're up to. And we've been talking about this for a few months now to finally get you on the show and have a chance to talk about the cool things you're doing there at Fairfax. And let's start with personal backgrounds. Jessica, start off and tell us, what you do there at Fairfax and how you got to be in that position. How did you evolve through your career to be where you are now?
Sure. So thanks for having me. Right now, I'm the lead for the data analysis section in our data analysis and strategy management division. So I've got a team of analysts that work with me on everything data for the fire department from all over the place. I have been here for 6 years, came here in 2018. Before that, I was a crime analyst for the the police department for Fairfax County for 14 years. And so moving from police to fire was a little bit scary because the rivalry is real. But the fire department offered me some growth. And so I took the leap and joined the fire department. And when I got here, realized pretty quickly that the analysis community on the fire side is not quite as cohesive as it is on the law enforcement side. The law enforcement community, the analyst community is really strong, really robust, great reach, great resources. So it was really easy on the law enforcement crime analysis side to get help and to understand phenomenons and patterns and trends that were going on crime-wise, and it hasn't been that way on the fire side. So part of my mission personally as an analyst on the fire side now is to formalize that community, or at least make it a bit more organized. So we're hosting a symposium on Friday here in Fairfax that we're pumped about because we thought it was just going to be kind of a small couple dozen people between Richmond and Baltimore, and we're pushing 100 people from 4 different states. So really excited about that. So yeah, I guess that's a little bit about me and how I landed here.
It feels a lot like we're hacking through a jungle with a machete when it comes to data in the fire service at this point. Still very fresh and lot of grass to cut, as I like to say.
And I hear that a lot. I hear a lot of people say, oh, the police have it figured out. Not necessarily. The analysts maybe are more organized and have some things figured out. I don't know as a profession that law enforcement is necessarily light years ahead of fire when it comes to data analysis. Just in my experience alone with Fairfax, I think we're doing awesome things. We're pushing the needle and always moving forward, even if slowly. So I think there's a lot of work to be done, but I think that the community on the fire side is ready for it and wants it, and very much wants to understand it and use it, responsibly. So I think that makes me very comfortable here. It was an uphill climb. I thought I was going to be a lot more comfortable than I was when I started, because working in the same county, I already knew the CAD, I already knew the communities and the government and the geography of Fairfax County. So none of that was new. But the fire service is very different from the police. And that took a little bit of time, still learning all of the lingo and operational stuff. But this is a very easy environment for me to do it in, because we have been given free reign to go out and talk to who we need to talk to and ride with who we need to ride with, and ask questions of anybody to better understand what the problem is so that we can help solve it.
Outstanding. That's always been an interesting kind of dichotomy of culture, is how like law enforcement even trains their recruits, as far as documentation and data capture is very important. We are just starting to incorporate some of that in recruit schools and things like that now. So we'll get there. We'll move quick. We always do. We always figure it out, And my other guest is Chief John Morrison. Chief, welcome to the show, and I appreciate you taking the time to spend a few minutes with us today. Tell us where you came from, because you've got an interesting background as well as how you came to be in the chair you're sitting in now and leading the data team there.
Yeah, thanks. And I appreciate you having us on, Eddie. I joined the fire department as a volunteer when I was 16 years old, became an EMT, eventually a firefighter, eventually a unit officer, and then a command officer. And I am currently serving, and I have been now for the last 15 years, as chief of the Vienna Volunteer Fire Department, which is one of the stations here within Fairfax County. My professional career, I spent 20 years as an IT software developer and project manager for a federal contractor. And then basically approached the new fire chief and said, I think we're a little weak in overall data governance and cohesive analysis. And, I think we can be better at that. And eventually he was able to create a division, and I applied for that job and got hired. And now we have I started the month before COVID. So I had 1 month to start building a team. And then everything sort of fell apart. And the people that I had just learned said, it's time to go home, and I don't know when you're going to come back again, but we'll do a bunch of stuff virtually. So virtual team building was a fun thing. And then, so I've been here full time. So I'm a civilian with the Fairfax County Fire and Rescue Department. And as Jessica said, leading our data analytics strategy management division. So we have a division of 9 full-time employees right now doing analytics. So 3 analysts, 3 GIS professionals, a uniformed captain who oversees our incident reporting system, a full-time database server administrator, and then myself leading the team as the manager.
And it's a division. So where does that fit in the chain of command? Are you like part of the main command staff, or?
Yep. Yeah. So my position is part of senior staff. So the way we were before 2020, we had pockets of analytics all over the fire department. So we had an operations analyst, we had an EMS analyst, we had a business analyst that was over in health and wellness. GIS and the database administrator were in the IT division. And so what they did was they pulled all of these analysts out and centralized them in a division. So I report to one of our assistant chiefs, who was our number 2 in the agency. And then he reports to the fire chief. So I essentially the same as the training division, same as we have 2 operational divisions per shift. So it's a division level position, which gives it a lot of credibility to go around the agency. And one of the things when Chief Butler hired me, he said, there are no data silos for you. Go in and go get whatever data you need. And one of the reasons that I love my job is he just said, make this department better. Wherever that leads you, make this department more efficient, more effective. And every day we sort of strive to do that as our division, of whether it's doing data integrations, data automations, analysis, all of that together sort of comes into our division.
Literacy,
data literacy.
Yeah.
That's great. That's a great example.
Yeah. Oh man. Yes. This being a retired fire chief guy, I spent a lot of time in Google or, looking up what this term is and what that term is and which term is the right term to use. That's a huge component of that. So
you mentioned the recruits earlier, and we've been fortunate that we've been now to every recruit school. When you get promoted, we send our officers to an officer development academy. So we sit in every single one of those things. We sit in Officer 1, Officer 2, and each one's a little bit different flavor because you're doing it different audiences, but we're selling the why. It's not just get the red out of the reports anymore. There are decisions being made behind the data that you submit. And we run 125,000 calls a year, and you can't possibly look at every single one of those to make sure they're correct. So you really have to get the ground level buy-in from our folks, our frontline officers and firefighters, to know why they're entering the data and why we ask these certain questions this way. So it's a little bit of salesmanship as well. And that's one of the things that we've done very well and it's a never ending battle going around the entire department, trying to just educate people on the why.
Yeah. And how big is Fairfax? I mean, we assume most people, because we're all in Virginia, we assume everybody knows who Fairfax is, but how big is that? How many stations are in Fairfax?
So we have 39 stations, 8 battalions. We are 1,400 sworn and about 350 volunteer.
Okay. So still a strong volunteer contingent there as well. That's awesome.
It's entirely supplemental for us. They provide additional capacity to the system, but it's a large department. It's the biggest department in Virginia and one of the top ones in the country.
Yeah, that's amazing, and to have the stars align in the way that they have, you have not only the talent, you have the talented folks like you and your team, but you have the executive support as well, which is really remarkable. That's not always available to
yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons for our success is, a lot of the decisions being made now come through our division. And, there's the old debate between being data driven and data informed. And so I kind of like the data informed because we're not a business. We're a fire department. So what everybody is doing is using data to check their intuition. Hey, I think this is the right direction. Are we going there? Like, what does the data say on this? And Jessica's got some fun stories about, you get basically one go back for, hey, yeah, but what if, so having them ask the right question. Sometimes the question they ask is not really what they want of, hey, how many water rescues did we have last year? All right. Why do you want to know? Because there's probably some sort of question behind that question that they're really trying to drive deep to. And so that's where our analysts are really spectacular, is that they understand that the question that they're asking, that the senior ops or whoever it is asking, is not really the underlying thing they're trying to get to.
Fair. That's a remarkable point. That's, we asked the question for a reason, and usually that's really the root cause that sometimes we haven't even identified. So, that's an important part. I've heard y'all talk at numerous, events about how you already mentioned you're getting out to the recruit schools, you're getting out to the officer development programs. Do you have the opportunity to visit firehouses or have any people on duty type of interaction?
Oh my God. Yeah, we do. And I also have a ghost living in my office who turns the lights on and off at random times. We do. So we this year have started visiting. So we have, like John said, we have 8 battalions, 3 shifts. So we're visiting every battalion on every shift. So 24 station visits, 2 a month, where we just kind of put out our calendar and said, hey, we're going to be in battalion 4 A shift on this date. So one of these 4 or 5 stations, if you want to host us, we'll bring you burritos, and in exchange, you give us 15 minutes to kind of, pitch what we do and why we do it and why it matters to the field. And then we hang out for as long as they'll have us. Sometimes we stay through dinner. Sometimes we go on ride-alongs with them if it's a cool call and they have, space on the rig. But so we've been to 8 stations so far this year. One of them was kind of a bust, which is fine. One of them we had to cancel due to a line of duty death. And then we had 6 that were amazing, outstanding. I mean, to be invited into the kitchen or into the bay and sit with them during shift and just have a conversation is it's really the best way to kind of get the point across, because so frequently, we have this Did You Know campaign, which we can talk about as well. They don't know, right? They go through the academy and the goal is get the red to go away, pick the first best choice and keep going. Because maybe you've got another call coming or you haven't slept in 2 days. So getting out there and having a conversation and plugging in the laptop and saying, show me what you want to know. Show me what you're confused about. If a task group made a decision and you don't understand why, well, let me pull up that analysis that we gave them and show you. And we can poke holes in it. We can talk about the assumptions and why we used the data that we used or revised something later down the road. But they do want to have those conversations, and they won't do it over email and they won't do it over text. But if you just sit down at the table while we're having a meal, we'll have a conversation about why are we asking for first name and last name and date of birth on a lift assist now? Well, it's because we can now take a fire report for a person who needed a lift assist and match that to the same person on the EMS side who's had a patient encounter and understand the complete picture of what's going on for them and resource it. The fire department can't solve everybody's problems. We're simply responding to calls for service, but we have partners in the county and in the community that have different resources, and they can solve the root cause. They can go install a railing on the stairs or repair the carpet that's pulling up or the brick walkway that's pulling up, or get someone a home health aide between 12 and 4 when they're needing to go to the doctor and come home, so that we're not, responding just to get them from the car to the house and back. So when they understand we're asking these questions so that we can resource this problem elsewhere and solve it so that the next call doesn't come and you're not interrupted during your sleep, your team training or meeting is not interrupted, and you're available for the emergency, the real emergency that happens. You're in quarters and available to respond to it. And so very frequently when you just have, what was that, a 2-minute pitch? And they're like, okay, I get it. Like, I thought someone was just asking because, another person wanted a demographic or something like that. And when you tie it back to what it means for them as they're receiving the call, they get it.
That's been a theme I've heard in the show, where it's not that we're adverse to data collection as firefighters. It's that we tend to do better at it when we understand the impact that it has.
Mm-hmm. And you start building these evangelists throughout the whole department of like this one captain we were just at Fire Station 28. This one captain sent out an email to his entire battalion saying, hey, here's the why. And so when you start getting the uniformed firefighters and officers explaining the data why to other uniformed firefighters and officers, you're making an impact. And that's a tremendous sort of way that we can do a force multiplier of data literacy.
And we were lucky on that one because we're not going to hit 1,400 people. We're going to hit 24 shifts. And that day, we had another firefighter working overtime or callback for another station. So he was also very involved. And I was chatting with him about timestamps and hitting en route and on scene and available, and how we are just now in the early stages, but able to kind of monetize a response to a call. So I know who's writing, I know what their hourly salary is, and I know how long that unit spent on that call. So I can immediately tell you personnel-wise how much we spent in salary. And I can chat with our apparatus folks about per mile, what does that mean for an engine truck rescue in terms of maintenance and gas and things like that. And so when I was explaining, if you're fudging your button pushes because you want to become available immediately for the next call, it doesn't look like you were on this call for very long. So you were there for 20 minutes, but it looks like you were there for 2.5 minutes because you hit your available button as soon as you got there because you knew, because you've been there twice a day, every day for 6 months. You knew it was going to be a quick, get them back into bed or get them into the house, have a conversation, make sure everything's fine, and then you take off. So you understand why they want to be available and why they hit the availability button so that they can listen and be, dispatched on something. But when you explain that doing that minimizes the monetary impact, which is really what motivates government to do something different if it costs more, then that's how we leverage getting help from other resources, when we can say it costs us a lot of money for these public service calls, that we can probably resolve through another means, through community services or adult protection services or the police or health department. There's another agency that's differently resourced to actually help this person with their problem, not just the fire department respond with a Band-Aid.
Boy, you said a lot. As a budget chief, old budget guy, I'm pretty excited about monetizing and understanding what the actual cost by call type would be incredibly powerful in the budgetary process and in the political process. My goodness, that would be fantastic. That was I noticed every show there's always a master class that happens in like 3 minutes. And they're these are the things that end up in the workshops and stuff later. Like, I'll go back and grab that. That was a fantastic description of capturing that. And one of the things that I've noticed in a lot of the discussions around data in the fire service lately has been, there is a balance. I don't know that we're going to get a lot more resources than what we're already getting. So the only way to address some of these challenges with call volume is to get some of the non-emergent calls off our plate, right? And we're not going to grow to be much bigger than we are, so we have to try to reduce the workload in any way we can. And the only way you would ever, without that data, you would never really have a way to capture it. That's really amazing. Nice masterclass there, Jessica.
Like I said, we're just starting, but we have the data. We just need to basically automate and make it fast to answer that question.
Amazing. And you mentioned the Did You Know program. Tell us what that is. How are you leveraging that?
So that's something that started in 2019. So I was brand new still, maybe 6 months. And I was reading every fire that came in. There's an email that comes in every morning, and it just lists all the fires that happened the night before. And, maybe 5-7 fires a day in Fairfax County. And I came in one day in March of 2019, and there were like 37 or 38 fires. And my immediate thought was, there's a problem with the query. Like it dumped everything in here 4 times or something. Because I drove through Fairfax County to get here, and it was not burning to the ground. So something's got to be wrong. And so I go and look, and I'm reading all of them. They're mulch fires. It was landscape season in the spring, and all the landscaping folks were outside spreading mulch everywhere and then depositing their lit cigarettes in it at the end of the day and catching everything on fire. And every narrative was the same: 2x2 mulch fire, put it out with a can. 2x2 mulch fire, put it out with a can. So I go and I'm looking, and I think we had 17 different NFIRS incident type codes, from, outside fire to, a 100 to, trash fire. I mean, everything. And so I was like, okay, well, these all really sound the same to me. Maybe we should probably code them the same way so that they all look the same in the data, because I can't read, we're running 125,000 calls a year. I can't read that many reports. So I depend on those discrete data fields to find patterns and problems. So I put out a quick, 1 page on how to document a mulch fire, which, the guidance from NFIRS at the time was a 160. And then, the item first ignited is mulch or whatever. And then we changed the label in the form so that when you choose 160 in the parentheses, it includes the word mulch. So if they're typing mulch into the incident type code, that will pop up first instead of something else. So we sent that out. And since then, we've been doing 2 Did You Knows a month, one for NFIRS or fire reports and one for EPCR, patient encounters. And it's just really quick 1 page, mostly pictures and colors, not a lot of text, screenshots of the report form so that it's really familiar to them, or just like we did one on the difference between a paved trail and a gravel trail for property types, because we have a ton in Fairfax County. And so accessing people on trails is different depending on what it is. And so we just used photos of actual trail signs so that if you're not into reading, you can get the gist of what the document is for just by looking at the pictures. So we send those out agency-wide once a month in what I try to make a funny email. I tell jokes, I use GIFs, and so those are really effective. A lot of stations will print them out and put them in a binder. Some stations print them out and put them over the urinal, which is my favorite because, that's prime real estate. And so for them to give us a spot on that wall is a big deal for me. And honestly, a lot of now that program is or that initiative is catching and has caught, I do get people calling saying, can we do a did you know on this? Because I don't know how to document a kiosk inside of a mall. Like, what property type is that? Or these new building types that are going up that are retail on the bottom and condos or apartments or something on top. What are we supposed to call that? Or a particular incident type? And so that's very easy. My team's happy to do the research and find the best way to document that so that we're all doing it the same way. And that way we can detect patterns on incident types, property types, stories of buildings, patient encounters, procedures, medications, age groups, all that kind of stuff. It's a lot easier for us to find patterns when we're all documenting the same way. And so that was kind of the birth of the Did You Know? And we just pump those out once a month, and people seem to love them.
I mean, that's remarkable when you look at, I'm thinking of all the fire departments that don't have staff, right? Folks dedicated to a data team of any sort. And in fact, in the workshops I've been doing, that's one of the questions I ask. Who is doing your data work? Do you have dedicated analysts, or is it, some guy that does other things too? It's like other things, Most of the time it's the person with the other jobs, and this is something that they have a knack for, and that's what we get. So having somebody pay attention to that level of detail is huge.
And it's so cost effective, right? I mean, when I built the first one in Microsoft Word, and then we hired what we call Gen Z Jessica Handoko is the other Jessica on our team. And, she came in with some graphic design and really good eye for design. And so she created a new and pretty cool template in Canva, still free. So, what we're doing is free. The time that we're investing, if I don't know the answer, I'll spend an hour researching it if I need to, and then putting that document together and sending it out in an email. It's the return on investment there is huge because I'm spending, let's say, an hour a month on this, and then it reaches 1,400 people. Are they all going to read it and commit it to memory? Absolutely not. But they know where to find it the next time, and they now have a contact if they have a question about it. And that's part of the station campaign too. And the captain last week was honest about that. He's like, listen, people aren't just going to respond to your email, but now that I've met you in person and I see that you're normal, if I have a question, I'll just call you. And they do. So I do get probably one call a week from the field with someone asking, how do I close this? How do I document this? What's the best way to do this? And I'm that person who doesn't answer their phone if you're not in my contacts, unless it's my work phone. Because if someone's calling my work phone and they're not in my contacts, it's probably somebody from the field trying to figure something out. They don't want to go to bed until this is done correctly. So it's been great.
Hallelujah. That's amazing. You're kind of hitting around the NERIS thing. Like I know Fairfax is one of the kind of pilot departments working on that. And of course, that common data schema, the new data schema is an important piece and will hopefully resolve a lot of these challenges theoretically. What's that like now that you're living in it a little bit? And John, Chief, what do you think? How is it doing it?
It's good. I mean, what has been remarkable has been the responsiveness of UL and USFA to our comments. If the old adage of if you've seen one fire department, you've seen one fire department. We're a large metro-sized fire department, so we're not going to be the same as a small single station department somewhere in Idaho. So we're trying to think at that level, and I know they have some great representatives in the 6 Alpha departments that do that. But we've been tasking, I think. We have about half a dozen officers out in the field that have volunteered to double enter stuff into both our reports system for NFIRS and the NERIS system. We also have a light duty firefighter who is taking every fire that we run and entering them, just taking the report out of NFIRS and then entering what would be happening into NERIS. And then a couple of us are just thinking of wild, wacky things, calls we've run in our career, whether it be giant conflagrations or just weird calls in weird places, and trying to get them to fit. And, we send USFA or UL our thoughts and, hey, what do we do with this? One of the questions we just sent back today is because they're starting to document, they're tracking maydays and rescues. Because we don't do that well in NFIRS, and we don't celebrate our successes for the people that we actually rescue from fires in a consistent way. And so some of the questions we pushed back were, hey, one of the questions we want added was, when did you know about the person you were rescuing? Was it on dispatch or prior to arrival? Did you find out about it on scene, or did you happen to find the victim? What were you doing when you were you dedicated to searching for that victim, or did you just happen upon them because you were pulling a hose line? Because that's going to really dictate a lot of training for departments of, did we know that? And same thing with firefighter rescues of, when you declared the mayday, how long it took, what resources you took back. So they've been tremendously responsive to our feedback. It's still very much an alpha product. And I believe they're looking to bring on 50 more departments in July or later this summer. And we're looking, because obviously we run a lot of automatic aid. And one of the benefits there will be, we have areas of our county where we dispatch an automatic aid department and we don't know anything beyond they got there and they went home. Because they may run that department or that incident entirely by themselves without any Fairfax County units, because we do closest regardless of jurisdiction for our unit dispatch. Now with NERIS, everything's going to go into this central repository, and through we're going to stick with an RMS, but still submit data to NERIS. We can then get data back about what those departments did. And so we can build a better risk picture of the incidents that are happening in pockets of this county where we have automatic aid first due. And that's really going to allow us to be a little bit more holistic in our approach, rather than just saying, well, it was an EMS call in this area, or it was a car accident. We could dive a little deeper because we're all going to have this common language. And then the other part about it that I really like is the agility that's coming with the emerging hazards module. So that's going to be things like tracking CSST fires, lithium ion fires. And then whenever it's, I think Dr. Laurie said, when it's aliens coming down from space, we can all track it the same way, because we could add those emerging hazards and make sure that it's not static like NFIRS was, so that when our, elected leaders or fire service leaders go to lobby in front of Congress about battery fires and how that needs to be legislated or regulated, they'll have the data, from all of the departments across the country in near real time, as opposed to, we have 2023 data now. So you really get a better picture of what's going on in the entire country, which I think is a tremendous benefit.
How do you think, the V1 schema was pretty straightforward, very simple, very direct. How do you see, from your experience working with that thus far, do you expect to see that expanded a great deal, or maybe just some modification?
I do. I just had a conversation with some of the UL guys today. The U.S. Fire Administration is trying to get at a macro level what's going on around the country. And so one of the things that we asked is they essentially in NERIS just want one narrative for the entire incident. I think our agency's perspective is we want to know every unit to write a narrative, because the battalion chief may not know what the second in truck company was doing or the third in engine company. And we want them to tell their story and what unit actions they took. And so I think what we'll end up seeing is NERIS will be here's the minimum data set, the required fields we want from everybody. And then through your RMS vendor, you'll be able to say, okay, we want to have this expanding beyond that minimum data set. And so if you want to track incident narrative or unit narratives rather than just an incident narrative, you can do that through your RMS. And then your RMS will automatically communicate to NERIS and send up the summarized incident narrative. And so I think it's going to be, we have a summit here at the end of the month with our CAD and RMS vendors, with the tech panel and all of the UL and USFA team. And that's going to be sort of our sales pitches. There's still room for vendors out there, and RMS vendors. NERIS is not, it's a data collection tool. And if you don't have anything right now for an RMS, NERIS is free and it allows you to submit your data, and that's fantastic. But if you want to be a little more, collect more data, collect it in a different format, but still have it integrate, a vendor might be a better option. So, but USFA and the UL team have been tremendous in being responsive to us, as one of the alpha departments of all of the data we've sent back up. And we sent them a list of probably 40 or 50 things yesterday of, hey, have you thought about this? How would you code that? And I got a text at 6 p.m. last night from Craig at UL who said, hey, you have 15 minutes to talk through this stuff. And that evening, while I was going to my son's Little League game and they were doing their warm-ups, had a 30-minute conversation with them, going through each iteration and saying, yeah, that's great. Have you thought about this? Going back and forth. So it's a tremendous engagement. And that's, I think, it's sort of an honor to be one of the 6 alpha departments to help steer this. And for the 50 beta departments that are going to come later and get selected later this summer, I mean, it's on all of us. If you don't complain now and don't speak up now, you kind of got to hold your peace for the next decade or two, for the rest of our careers probably. So for those 50 departments, along with the 6 alpha departments, it's on us to steer this ship, because we're going to be using it for a long time to come, and it's going to inform a lot of the national level decisions.
Well, you made a great point that they're looking at the call narrative, but as a company officer, like I've had to deal with court cases even after I retire, right? And I don't know what I did years ago. Who knows? I don't remember what I did yesterday half the time. So, having that narrative, that individual unit narrative, is going to be a key piece to protect you as that particular company officer, that crew on that unit, just to have a record of what did you do? Did you take that hydrant or not? So that's an important piece. What advice do you have? There's fire departments, I think, we're probably going over the 50% hump, I guess, on people understanding that NERIS is out there, that it's coming. What advice, as a department that's already in there and hands-on, how should other fire departments be getting themselves prepared for this integration?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways that you can do it. One of them is you can just use NERIS straight up. You can onboard with them, submit data through NERIS through the app, and that's great. If you have a CAD, you can have CAD integration direct to NERIS, and they'll work through that through the onboarding process. And then if you have an RMS and CAD, you can continue to use your RMS and it'll integrate with CAD. And the RMS vendors are going to have some work cut out for them as they build out the NERIS schema from the NFIRS schema going forward. So I think for any department out there, I think there's a couple things you should do. One is identify a point person, because NERIS is coming, and there's no getting around it. Start collecting what are all the possible units you could have in your department. Is it engine 1 Bravo, engine 1 paramedic, engine 1, whatever it is. Start identifying all those permutations and start listing them out, because you will need that for your onboarding process. And they're going to need certain things like geographic boundaries, so GIS layers of where your station dues are, and where you are the authority having jurisdiction for your political area. So start collecting all of those bits of data. And I think Dr. Lori's plan was by the end of next year, by the end of 2025, NFIRS is going away. So we all have a steep on-ramp for us, but it looks like it's going to be successful the way it's going.
That geospatial thing seems to be a lot of fire departments, so they're going to have somebody dispatch them somewhere. There's probably still some that get a phone call at the firehouse, but there's usually a CAD somewhere out there that's involved in that. But the geospatial piece, the street layers and that types of things, that's I can see that being the trickier part for a lot of fire departments. Do you have any advice? I mean, both of y'all are very well up, in tune with the whole GIS world. What would you tell somebody that doesn't know how to spell GIS, where to go get it?
A lot of at least governments have Esri as a some sort of a data source or some sort of a contract, whether that be a county, town, state, whatever level. There's plenty of like QGIS. There's plenty of other stuff out there. And what we push our folks for is just go break stuff, go download an app and play around with it and draw a box, draw a polygon, draw a line in some sort of app, and sort of figure it out if you have nobody. Because all of the stuff we do is pretty much inherently geospatial, where the calls are, where the calls aren't, where your coverage maps are. And that's all the geospatial community does is take these inherently geospatial problems and map them out, do predictive analysis, all of that stuff.
Or partner with the university. I mean, there's universities and students who are dying for real world work to do before they get out there and apply for their first job. So that's a huge resource for fire departments to say, hey, do you have any students who are looking at mapping or GIS? Because we need to establish some shapefiles or some feature classes for our jurisdiction. And they'll do it for free. I mean, they want the work, they want the experience.
That's a great recommendation. And there's probably, even in the rural areas, there's usually some opportunity for that, even if you got to drive a little bit. That's a great. I was thinking that's what I've noticed thus far. People can generally get, they might have to beat some doors down to get access to the CAD data, and that sort of thing if it's in a different agency or whatever. But the geospatial thing seems to be one of the tricks. So that's great. It's good to hear hands-on. Everybody's, in the data world, we're all talking about it, but very few people have actually had their hands on the tools. So it's great to hear that it's working as well as it is. That's fantastic. One of the things I wanted to talk to y'all about was I noticed that at the last couple of meetings, that the term artificial intelligence keeps popping up. I sat in a lecture. We were all there, at least Chief, you and I were there. And it seems to be like a little bit of a moving target as to what even AI is, and then even further down the rabbit hole to figure out people who are actually doing it. So what does it mean? How does Fairfax, how do y'all see this term AI, and how would you know it when you see it?
It's a great question because everybody thinks AI is something different, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's whether it's Chat GPT or image generation, we've used it a couple ways. I know that the ways we've been successful, which is not very many, we've used it for some of our disaster drills for our urban search and rescue team to create images of collapsed buildings because there haven't been that many collapsed buildings in the whole world. So you kind of, if you've been on an exercise, you kind of just see the same collapsed buildings over and over again. So to have AI generate some collapsed buildings and build those pictures and then have a narrative about it is kind of cool. But we've figured out about 50 ways not to do it right and not to succeed. So we're still practicing. We've done a couple things. One is hydrant detection. We have about, I think, 35,000 fire hydrants in our county. And sometimes they move, sometimes they get knocked down. There's construction all the time. And so what we've done is basically trained a TensorFlow machine learning model to go out and detect hydrants from geolocated images. So Google Street View, Virginia Department of Transportation drives every street every year with a camera and sort of looks for potholes and things. So we can train a machine learning model to look at hydrants and then figure out where they are in space by how many pixels high they are, and then compare that against our GIS database to make sure that we're not missing something. A hydrant hasn't, been installed or moved, and sort of validate that our data is correct. So we've done that on a small scale. That requires, when you do it right, a lot of GPU power that we are not really. We don't have a lot of that in county government, so that may be something we go forward with. And then the next one, we tried to work with our EPCR data to get our narratives and read and understand our narratives to make sure that when somebody says, I applied a Lucas device or I did an EasyIO in the right right leg, did they document that as an independent procedure or a medication in their EPCR? Because as Jessica pointed out earlier, the discrete fields are what we can run reports on, not necessarily the text in a narrative. So can we do that as sort of a automated QA check to make sure that people are appropriately documenting? And that's difficult because they could say, I could not obtain an EZ-IO in the right leg because of whatever reason, right? We could not apply the Lucas for whatever reason, or the Lucas failed. And so to learn both the medical language and then the fire department vernacular on top of that in a narrative, and the shorthand that we all use to sort of say, different words and terms, has been difficult. So we actually tried to do that with custom entity extraction through Microsoft's AI Builder. And I think because we either set it up wrong or whatever it was, we blew through all of the county's credits in about 2 days for a year. So we're waiting to get back with Microsoft and our RMS vendor to say, this is something I think everybody could use in the whole fire service community or EMS community. Can we work together to build this stuff? Because we transport 75,000 we have 75,000 patient encounters a year. We have the data set to do it, and we're willing to share it in a, HIPAA protected sort of way. But we need a little bit of help because we're just sort of, doing a little stuff with, in this case, Microsoft's AI Builder and failing multiple different ways. But that's sort of the way you make an omelet, is you break a whole lot of eggs. So we're figuring out all the ways not to do it in the hope that someday we're going to figure it out right and move forward. That's cool. Yeah. Those are great examples. A lot of times what people will call AI, it's like, no, it's a hypercube algorithm. That's not really, or machine learning even. Let's make it even more complicated. What's the difference between like machine learning and artificial intelligence? Are they the same thing? Yeah, especially in the fire service, it's a lot of gray lines. The thing about, if you look at like ChatGPT, it's confidently wrong a lot of times. It'll tell you that the 75th president of the United States was John Smith. There was some case law in New York where a lawyer used ChatGPT to write a brief, and it cited cases that never existed. And so, you got to be careful with it, with AI and just letting it run. And so we're starting with the machine learning side of it, just because it's a little bit smaller of a chunk to bite off. And then we'll see where it goes. But, it would be cool to use AI for stuff. We just don't know what that stuff is. It's like community risk reduction in the beginning. Everybody was just sort of saying it because it's like, oh yeah, of course we do that. But nobody really had a solid definition. And that's now come a long way since that was introduced. But I think AI is sort of the same thing, where it's like, of course we're doing AI, but nobody can define what AI is truly. So we're starting with machine learning and the deep learning of the image detection and things like that. So we're starting at the beginning stages. We're crawling right now, hoping to walk here in a little bit.
What are you guys most excited about when you look out on the horizon? Like I am so old that when I got in the fire department, there was no email, right? That there was, when the fire chief wanted to send a message out, they put it on blue paper. We called them blue missiles, and we had to drive them around the county to be distributed to every fire station. And then we got email, and looking at just that period of time, what do you see going forward with the horsepower and capabilities that you have? What do you think what are you excited about looking downrange, and how you could take a team like you have, say 5 years from now? Where do you think, what's going to be the cool thing in 5 years for Fairfax?
I can think.
You want to start, or do you want me to start?
Two things. So part of what my team works on a lot is automation, like processes, and what are, like, in lay terms, the goal is to kill every PDF and Excel spreadsheet in the fire department, for two reasons. One, they take a really long time to fill out sometimes. And two, the data vanishes the moment that you print it, right? So we don't know why people are retiring, or we don't know why they're dropping their ALS status, or we don't know why they wanted to have this training on this date. What's your goal? So part of what we're doing is automating those kinds of processes, whether it's the need to call for an elevator inspector to come out when you put it out of service, to recognize someone for reaching a 10-year milestone in their ALS certification, or to recognize a citizen for performing CPR or applying an AED before we got there. There's so many data points in our forms that we can glean information from that doesn't require another human being to take another action for it. So we're doing a lot of automation just to give people their time back. The budget is so tight this year, and I think that's the same for everybody. So if we can give employees their time back by automating things that would have taken a long time to do manually, then they can be more focused on the stuff that's important every single day. The second thing that I think I'm excited about is the capability to really start to layer and integrate data from lots of different places. Right now, our main data source is what we create in the fire department, but we are incorporating demographic and census data. We're incorporating weather, traffic, all of that kind of stuff. And so we have lots of different data sources, and we're kind of in the beginning stages of, we can look at them side by side, but what we want to do really is layer them and understand better how they interact with each other, how a population in this part of the county affects our call volume there, or the types of calls that we go to, the road engineering, curves and hills and things like that. So we have so much data, and we do have a really robust team. And so I think one of the things that I'm excited for in the next 5 years is really getting a hold of all those data sources that right now aren't necessarily connected, but should be, because they all kind of play off of each other, to inform things like risk and response and resource deployment, things like that.
And then I'll tag on two things. One, fire is the city of Pittsburgh a while ago did a risk prediction model that they open sourced. And so can we, with both commercial and residential buildings, because they're probably going to be different models, can we predict the fire risk? Because right now we do inspections, say, every X number of years based on the type of occupancy. But we know that certain businesses in certain areas are probably more fire prone just through intuition because of our experiences running calls. So could we predict risk and know that, for example, in a residential building, if it's rented out, where we send the tax bill, how far away that is from the actual location may impact risk, because if the landlord lives in the building, then they're probably going to take better care of it versus if they live far away. So can you take all of this modeling to then say, hey, we respond to every fire the same, 4 engines, 2 trucks, a rescue, 2 battalion chiefs and everything else. But I know that the risk in this building is higher, or the risk in this other new building that's got sprinklers and, all of the modern fire safety stuff is less. Do we then predict, hey, if you have a fire or an appliance fire in this type of structure, always dispatch it not as an appliance fire, but as a structure fire. So really tailoring our response and then tailoring our prevention efforts based on actual risk rather than just X number. We always do everything the same way. And then on the EMS side, and Jessica mentioned this a little bit earlier with the lift assists, is can we predict people's fall risks because we know that we have injury data from all the people that we transported. We now started collecting a couple of years ago or 2 years ago, the demographics of the people we just lift off the floor because they fell down or whatever, or needed help around their house. Can we build a model of what somebody at risk of a fall looks like? And then knowing that, they've lived in their house for 30 years, they haven't pulled a renovation permit to renovate any appliances or their kitchen in 20 years. They're over the age of 65, using all of our open and closed source data to then say, this person at this address is more likely to fall. And then rather than just showing up and knocking on the door saying, we're here to help prevent you fall, send them a postcard and say, hey, we have a fall prevention campaign. We're happy to come to your house. And, we now have light duty staff that are, either on injury leave or just, unavailable to be in the field. Send them out to these houses and do a fall risk prevention. And then, prevent that spiral of when somebody breaks their hip, their mortality is, dramatically increased. So if we can start measuring this and predicting this a lot more with all of this data that we're collecting, we can be much more efficient and also prevent stuff from happening in the first place, which is then inherently hard to, measure your success of you prevented an incident from happening because you did something. How do you celebrate that when the incident never occurred in the first place? So, there's, as Jessica said, we have all of this data. It's now, and we put a lot of runway into building all of this and gathering all of it and just storing it because we know we're going to need it someday. Now it's all connecting all of the dots in a way that can make a change in the community and really be impactful.
We're getting those non-emergency calls off our plate. That's going to be a big part of that. One of the things I get excited about is we're just starting to measure tactical benchmarks. We've measured response times. We've been doing that for a long time. We got a lot of data for that. We don't have much data, barely any, on any tactical things like, forcing a door, starting a fire stream, any of those things. But I'm very much immersed into the old NIST and the UL fire models, where they can load the dimensions of a building at a fuel load and weather parameters, and can get fairly accurate in modeling fire behavior. Wouldn't it be cool if we could, simulate fire operations to match a fire? That's one of the things I think. I just heard the FSRI guys use the term speed to task not too long ago, where they're measuring feet per second in firefighter rescue, evolutions. Now we're okay. Now I'm getting excited about that kind of stuff to be able to model that.
And we've started down that road. We wrote an app in-house called Fire QA that one of our safety officers that's deployed on every single fire goes out there with an iPad, and once the incident is sort of stabilized and the safety officer can stand back a little bit, he's out there collecting data with his iPad of how long did it take for a lap to be complete? How long did it take to get water on fire? What hose lines were pulled for what purpose? How many ladders of what type did we throw? Did we do an on-scene report correctly? What are the elements of the situation report after the lap complete did we say? Because that helps us build training, because then we can say, hey, we never do this, or we always do that, and we need to train more on that. But also training of, I know that if I have a probationary firefighter that's at the front door with the nozzle while their officer is doing a lap, I know that on a single family dwelling that's a McMansion, it's going to take 3 minutes for the officer to get around. And in that 3 minutes, that Pro-E firefighter has to make some decisions of, do I force a door? Do I start flowing water? And so we can build training like that. And then testing of, when you're doing your lieutenant's exam or a captain's exam, we'll put you on a treadmill for 3 minutes as you get on scene of a fire, so that you're a little bit winded when you have to making your tactical decisions, because that's the average of the time it takes to get across or to get around the building. So we started collecting that data, and that's something that I think that we're going to go deeper in of, tracking all of these little things. And we've trained, like I said, about 20 safety officers throughout the department that are dedicated data collectors. So we're not asking the unit officers to do it. We're not asking the command officers to do it. It's, one person on every fire that just goes around and collects data for us. And then we present that back in a dashboard to everybody in the field, so they can see all of the photos. They can see what hose lines were pulled. They have links to the radio traffic. And so you can train off even fires you weren't at by looking at the pictures, seeing where the apparatus was, seeing the command board, and, seeing the tactics that they deployed on that particular incident.
It's amazing. Y'all are doing some just absolutely fantastic work. It's, is there a particular way that folks could reach out to you if they wanted to ask a question, or you have a website, or what's the best way to communicate with you without blowing your phone up too much to
I think
bring it off the wall? But what's a good way to try to contact you?
Probably email would be the best way. So john.morrison@fairfaxcounty.gov.
Awesome.
Jessica.LeBlanc.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. I appreciate y'all taking the time out to come on the show today and share your story. It's amazing what you're doing. It's certainly a model for us to watch and see. For fire departments, there's many who will never get to the level of resources that we have, but you guys are in a position to kind of light the way. So we, as you hack through the jungle with your machete, we can see the trail, and we appreciate the leadership that you're demonstrating there for the fire service to go out there and kind of light the way for us. So thank you so much for that.
Thanks for having us
Thank
on.
you.
Absolutely. And that is a wrap for this episode of the Fire Service Data and Tech Talk. You can find us on the social media outlets. We're on Facebook, just under Fire Service Data and Tech Talk Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Data Tech Talk is the handle. And over on LinkedIn, you can always find me there, just Eddie Buchanan. So I appreciate you listening to this month. We'll be back next month. We're on the first Saturday of the month now is the schedule for the release of the show. So be sure to check back next time, and everybody be safe. Thank you very much.
Fire Service Data and Tech Talk.
Like a trusted turnout jacket you've had for years, Flex 7 outer shell fabric delivers a perfectly broken-in feel on the very first wear. Flexible, comfortable, and powered with the strength of enforced technology, Flex 7 outer shell fabric is made to move. To learn more, visit tenkatafabrics.com/Flex7. Flex 7, powered by enforced technology, only from Tenkata Protective Fabrics.